Hello, everyone, and welcome into into Arrowhead Addict, the Arrowhead Addict podcast. You do enough of these podcasts, you're bound to do that once in a while. I am Matt Verderame. He is Ben Heisler of BetSided, and today is Best Bets with BetSided, as we do every Thursday. And of course, this week it is the Chiefs and the Houston Texans down at Energy Stadium, and I feel like the only energy in that stadium is going to be coming from Chiefs fans, as Texans fans have, I think, given up, and rightfully so. The Chiefs are what now, 10-3, and the Texans are 1-11-1 in a year truly from hell. Heisler, what is your excitement level for 10-3 versus 1-11-1 here in week 15?
Can I tell you something? You know how Andy Reid has kind of made himself famous, or I suppose infamous, for starting his weekly press conference with, "We look forward to the challenge of playing so-and-so team this week.
Yes.
You know, they're a good football team." I actually think he's looking forward not to the challenge of playing the Houston Texans, but just to be able to play a team that theoretically they can just blow them out of the water, get a little bit of confidence back, because after that middle of the first half, when things really started to go south, this is a team that they may not say it, but they're a little bit wounded right now. Obviously won the game, 15 straight from Mahomes against Denver over the course of his career, which is fairly remarkable. The fact that he still hasn't lost a game against an AFC opponent on the road is still mind-blowing, even in a terrible performance. But I mean, they've used the Houston Texans for a while, even when they were good, with Deshaun Watson for the last few years as a punching bag.
Yep.
And I think they're very excited to be able to have that opportunity to do it again. Now, the question becomes, well, which Chiefs team is it going to be? Is this one of those games where they go through the motions yet again, just get by without anything to feel like they're putting themselves in a position where they have to show something on tape, knowing that the rest of the schedule has to play out a certain way for them to get their way and try and fight back into the top spot? I don't know. There's lots of trends that indicate that this is going to be another one of those games. And as we get into that over the course of today's show, you just have to wonder which of those two teams are going to show up. Is it the Chiefs team that can knock the snot out of anybody, or the Chiefs team that's basically just going to play very laissez-faire and just kind of hang around and eventually win the game, but not do it in the way that you expect them to do it?
Right. No, it's totally fair. By the way, I don't know that I'm ever going to have a moment to write this. I don't know if it's worth writing, but I think Chiefs fans will appreciate this. So everybody always talks about Patrick Mahomes and his stretch of road divisional wins because he's never lost a game on the road. I went back and looked because I was like, when is the last time they as a team have lost on the road in the division? So they have lost in 2017 to the Raiders, and they lost in 2014 to the Raiders. Those games were they were both Thursday night games.
Yeah.
The last time the Chiefs have lost a Sunday game on the road in the division was week 2 of 2014. I mean, that's got to be one of the wildest stats of all time.
And those were against, I mean,
it was against Peyton Manning's Broncos.
Okay. And 2014, was it 2014 or 2015, the year that they went to the Super Bowl?
That would have been,
I thought it was 2014.
I think the year after. No, I'm sorry. Well, they won in 2015. They lost in 2013.
And the Chiefs got them in the regular season that year?
The Chiefs in 2015, the Chiefs beat them in the regular season. Yeah.
Well,
they actually got Manning
benched. That Manning might have missed due to injury. Maybe that might have been an Osweiler game.
Well, no, they got Manning knocked out of the game. They knocked him out.
That's right.
They picked him off 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then Osweiler came in, the Chiefs just beat the piss out of him. But yeah, the last time, and obviously this doesn't matter for this game, but I just was curious and I was looking it up. The last time the Chiefs have lost a Sunday divisional road game was week 2 of 2014. It's almost a decade ago.
It's insane.
I mean, that is crazy. I don't care what metric you use. And they've even played a lot of good teams in that stretch. Like, it's not like they've had like, oh, well, they've played nobody. They've played a lot of good teams in that stretch, and that's still what you're looking at. Anyway, all right, let's get to this game. So I'm with you. Look, that Denver game last week felt like, hey, gonna feel great about this one at 27-0. And then by the end of it, you were ready to just throw yourself out of a window. But they did win. Now they play the Texans. They are 14-point favorites over the Texans on the road. Totals 49.5. They are unsurprisingly the biggest favorite of the week across the board in the NFL. Um, I feel like this line is right. I think it's what it should be.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Chiefs fans I think are going to say, "Oh God, another huge line. Are they actually going to cover it?" We're going to get into that, but I feel like if there's a game on the schedule that the Chiefs they really should just blow a team out, this is pretty much it. But obviously they've had problems covering all year long.
They've been one of the worst teams in the NFL at covering the spread. Chiefs right now going into week 15, just to take a sort of a bird's eye view at where they are. 4-8-1 against the spread. Been a little bit better on the road, 3-4-0. 3-7-1 against the spread as a favorite. They are tied with the Chicago Bears for the second worst against the spread record in the NFL. The only team that's been worse this year. And again, it's not much of a surprise given the expectations versus the sort of sense that they're going to be able to turn it around, has been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers, I believe, still do not have a home win against the spread this year. They were one of the best home teams last year. Buccaneers are 3-9-0 against the spread in 2022. Pretty remarkable numbers. As for the Texans, sometimes really bad teams are actually okay against the spread. Case in point, the Detroit Lions last year, they were 3-13-1, still ended up winning 11 games against the spread. They won 11-6 last year. They're actually one of the best teams since 2021 in covering the spread. Up in the Detroit Lions, they've actually covered in 6 straight. But the Texans are 5-7-1 against the spread. They're 2-4-0 against the number at home. And not surprisingly, they're also 2-4-0 against the spread as a home underdog. They do not have a win, Verderame, straight up at home this year. They're a one-win team on the road. I think what's also interesting about where the Chiefs are collectively as a team as to whether or not you can feel confident betting on them. You kind of have to just pick your spots. Go back to last year. This is a team that went 4-0 against the spread in the month of December. Down the stretch of the season, they were one of the best covering teams after being one of the worst covering teams throughout the entirety of the NFL season. But they were great down the stretch. They also are 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 road games against teams with losing records. Again, showcasing their ability to be able to beat up on bad teams. However, most of their recent trends are not particularly good at all. They are 1-9-1 against the spread in their last 11 games following a straight up win. They're also 0-6-1 against the spread against teams with losing records. So at home, especially against teams that have not been good, they have not shown up. On the road, they've been better, but as of late, it's been nothing but losses with the exception of one push for bad teams. I just don't know right now whether or not the Chiefs have that extra gear that they want to take it to, unless the calling is of a team that they believe is a calling card game for them. And I still can't figure out, Verderame, why that's been the case.
The Chiefs are the football team version of that gif of Stephen A. Smith, where he's like, he just kind of looks, he's like, we don't care. And he just starts laughing. Like, the Chiefs are that team. Because the only thing I can point to at this juncture with them is pretty much what you kind of alluded to, which is if you don't have their attention, they don't really care. They'll kind of just BS their way through the game. They're going to beat you anyway. I mean, I will say that for the Chiefs. As much as they drive myself and everybody who watches them nuts for 3 hours in a lot of these games, they don't lose the games. The Colts being the one real big anomaly. Because in Mahomes' career, the only time they've lost to a team that finished sub 500 was the Colts in 2019. The other won the Super Bowl, Jacoby Brissett, and the Colts this year. That's it. The only time they ever lost to a team sub 500.
And remember the conversation around the Colts, even in week 3, was this is going to be a team that's still likely winning that division.
Right, the bounce
right?
is back. Yeah.
Bounces back. Frank Reich's teams have always gotten off to historically slow. So I talked about it with you on this show that he was about 44% against the spread in weeks 1 through 5 because he had a different quarterback every year. Week 6 on, he was covering at about a 64% clip. That was from Sharp Football Analysis. Just they didn't give him the opportunity to really see it through. And honestly, if they would have, I don't know if it would have gotten there this year anyway. They just might have been cooked based on the current construction of the roster. What I'm curious to get your thoughts on with regards to Houston is even in the loss to Dallas, you could certainly make an argument that was by far and away their best performance of the season last week. On the road, in-state rivalry game, if you even want to kind of call it that. They played Dallas really well for about 3.5 quarters. Now, you can look at it in a couple different ways. You can say, all right, that was a game that had a little bit more juice to them, knowing the fact that it's in state. It was in Dallas, had an opportunity to get a little bit more exposure, whatever you want to sort of build your narrative around. Texans played really good football for a long time in that game, but eventually Dallas had too much firepower. Do you buy any of that forward momentum of starting to feel a little bit better about yourself, even in a loss, to then go into this game at home against Kansas City? Or do you think it was the NFL? NFL's a week-to-week league.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take much from what we saw last week into this matchup.
I honestly, I don't think there's much. I mean, if they'd won the game, maybe. But the fact that they ended up still finding a way to lose that game, I mean, they were up 23-20, and Dak threw a pick inside his own 10-yard line. And Houston somehow doesn't score a point out of that. And then the Cowboys go 98 yards to win the game.
Yeah, so they went for it on 4th down, trying to put it out of reach.
Yeah, don't get it, and then right down the field. So I honestly thought that game was more about, quite honestly, Dak was atrocious in that game.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't put a lot of stock into it. I think, look, every once in a while you're going to have a team that has a good game. They play hard, they play well, and maybe the other team just is completely asleep at the wheel. I kind of think is what you got in that game. I mean, look, the concern in this game is always with the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs. The Chiefs just have one of these games like they had in the last 2.5 quarters in Denver, where they're just completely uninterested in the game. They don't care. Mahomes makes throws he shouldn't make because he's bored. And, they let these teams back into it. Now, I will say this. The Denver game, we had talked about it. I thought the whole time that Denver was going to be a pain in Kansas City's ass because it's a division game. It's a road game. The Broncos are very good defensively. I'm going to be honest. I don't feel like that about this game. I don't. I mean, the Texans are going to trot out 2 quarterbacks in this game with Davis Mills and Driscoll playing. Like, Mills has been awful this year. He's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns, 11-12. Jeff Driscoll is Jeff Driscoll. I don't think I need to go too much further than that. Dameon Pierce has been awesome for the Texans this year, rookie running back. He is not playing in this game. He's hurt. So he's out. Brandon Cooks may or may not play. He's got 520 yards and 1 touchdown this year. They have nobody else. I mean, here are the names of the next 3 guys on their team that lead them in receiving behind Cooks. Nico Collins, Chris Moore, Jordan Akins. You could put those guys in a lineup, and most Chiefs fans would have no idea who they were. Okay. Defensively, Jerry Hughes is the only guy who's really worth talking about in the front 7. I mean, he has 8 sacks. He's been very good for them. It is just a guy central everywhere else. Stingley probably not going to play a corner for them, who's been excellent. This is one of these games. I think the Chiefs might be asleep at the switch and still win it by 17 points. I don't know. Now, would I bet on the Chiefs to cover? I'd probably be terrified based on all the trends you just gave. But last week was a game because of the divisional part of it, and coming off of that game against Cincinnati, there's no way I was going to bet the Chiefs to cover, and we talked about that. I said I'd take the under, which I would have lost that too. This game, I think as long as they don't turn the ball over a million times, they're probably going to cover just based on the fact that I just think they could play like total crap. And as long as they don't turn the ball over, they're probably winning by 14, 17. But I understand the people who go, what are you, nuts? I'm not taking the Chiefs and 14 points against Vanderbilt. I get it. I understand it.
As far as trying to figure out where the way to go, we'll give our best bets for the game coming up in a little bit. And obviously the issue on Thursdays is that, the props aren't typically set, at least at this point. But you brought up Dameon Pierce. And for a while, this guy was in the driver's seat for NFL Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
And rightfully so. He's had an awesome year. He's been the feature and focal point of that offense. When he has been given the opportunity, he's run with it. But you mentioned the injury. He's not going to play this week.
Yep.
They shouldn't play him the rest of the year if they're being smart about it, because it's a high ankle sprain. And if you're Houston, it's more advantageous for you to go and get the number one pick in the draft, as opposed to keeping Pierce out in the field and him possibly ruining your shot to get the number one pick and get the quarterback of the future next year. So I bring this up because it's a long shot, but Isaiah Pacheco is still kind of hanging around, worked his way up over the last few weeks into the Rookie of the Year conversation. You go and debate where he is currently. It's anywhere between like 15-1 to 25-1. I don't think he's going to get there. But in the event that he explodes against the worst run defense in the NFL by a wide margin, that's how you beat the Texans. If you want to throw on them, the Chiefs are talented enough to do that. But, I mean, if you're looking for an Andy Reid run the ball game because it's there for the pickings, this is the game. Like, it wouldn't shock me, Verderame, if Pacheco runs for 175 yards and 2-3 touchdowns. Like,
that would be quite the game.
It'd be quite the game, but would it shock you? You've seen how bad they are against the run.
It wouldn't shock me if the Chiefs actually decide to run the ball. It wouldn't shock me. This is also the team that, as we were doing our live show, I was having a coronary watching them on Sunday because they were winning the game by multiple scores almost the entire game, and just could not be bothered to run the ball once until there was about 4 minutes left. Like, Isaiah Pacheco got 2 carries until the final drive in the second half of that game. Yeah. The Chiefs just completely forgot he existed. So, I mean, that the fear I have in this game is not so much whether they'll lose. If they lose this game, it's a complete abomination. I'm not worried they're really going to lose. I could see, though, Pacheco. Ben, I'm with you. Like, I could see him if they gave him 25 carries, I could absolutely see him having a game like that.
Yeah.
My concern is he's going to have 10 carries for about 84 yards, and they're going to be up by 24 points and go, time to throw it. Gun it. Like that. That's the one thing that you look at and go, okay, well, but if they give him the ball a ton, yeah, sure, it's within the realm of possibility.
All right, so here's how bad the Houston Texans have been against the run. The second worst team against the run this year has been the Seattle Seahawks. They've all played 13 games. The Seahawks have given up 1,532 yards and 13 touchdowns. Okay. Houston has given up 302 more yards. There is a discrepancy between the second worst team at stopping the run and the worst team at stopping the run by 302 yards. And for what it's worth, they've given up 16 touchdowns. Seattle's given up 13. So, I mean,
they're terrible.
They're a disaster. And for the record, like let's say you're right. Let's say Andy continues to get a little bit pass happy, and it goes up
a little bit pass happy. That'll be the title of his book.
Right. Passing makes me happy. The Andy Reid story. But let's say they get into the red zone.
Yep.
I mean, Pacheco, if you're looking at anytime touchdown, if you're choosing Isaiah Pacheco most weeks to get an anytime touchdown, it's in that like plus 140, 150 range.
Right.
I'm looking at some of his numbers now. They're not really available. It's right around even money at a couple books. But man, 2 touchdowns in the game, you might be able to get that at 5-1, 6-1. You want to put a little bit of pizza money on 3 touchdowns? It's 20-1, 22-1. I mean, that's the matchup. Like, to me, if you're looking for a prop value on the board, and again, like, it's a crapshoot because it's trusting the Chiefs to do the right thing with the run game.
Right.
But I think this is a Pacheco day. Like, if you got him on your fantasy team and you've been worried about all the issues there, like, you got to play him this week. If you want to roll the dice a little bit on a 2-touchdown day or his over on his rushing yards, and this has to be the week to be able to do it because Isaiah Pacheco is set up for a monster game. Just the question of whether or not they'll give him the opportunity to succeed in it.
Yeah, I mean, I give you a bet, and I had no idea if the props even out yet or what the odds would be, but Mahomes is taking a lot of criticism this week, and everybody's talking about Hurts is going to be the MVP. I have no idea what the odds are on him throwing 4 touchdowns. That would be the prop I would take
Okay.
because I have a feeling in this game, if they have the opportunity to just whale it into the end zone, they're going to do it. Mahomes really had a very odd game against Denver where he made some of the most unbelievable throws of his career, which are really saying something, but then it had 2 or 3 of the worst you've ever seen. I think there's an opportunity. By the way, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think he could throw for 4, and I'd say Pacheco could score 2. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the question in this game is going to be, and this sounds really disrespectful to Houston, but I just think it's the truth. How badly do the Chiefs want to beat them? Like, is it one of these games where the Chiefs just get up, 21-3 and just fall asleep and basically roll over? That's fine. That's enough. Whatever. Or is it a game where the Chiefs want to feel really good about themselves and, that place is 70% Chiefs fans and the Chiefs just go out and beat them 42-17, and just roll them over and over and over. I mean, we're going to be doing the show. I'll be doing it with Patrick Allen at 4 Central today, and we'll go over the whole game in long-winded detail. But I always, write down a lot of different stats and metrics. The Texans are awful at almost every single one of them. Like, awful. They're not even halfway decent in a lot of these things. Like, they are brutal across the board. So you kind of feel like if the Chiefs really just say, you know what, we want to get back and feel good about ourselves, and we want to get to 45 points in this game, they're going to do it. Like, if they really want to, they're going to. You don't have to worry about weather. You don't have to worry about my thing is just, do the Chiefs really want to pour it on them? Or is it one of these games, which I think is the reason they're so bad against the spread a lot of times, where they get up by, 14, 17 points, and they just go, all right, listen, we're ready to just basically, to use a soccer term, park the bus and just sit on it for an hour, hour and a half and call it a day. Because I don't think Houston's going to threaten them very much in this game. I don't think offensively Houston's going to come roaring back. I think that's really the question. That's really, for me, the only question about this game.
I think about that game that Houston played against Miami a handful of weeks ago. I remember Miami was up like 30-0.
Yep.
And then they took out Tua. I think it was right after the Armstead injury, where he got sacked a handful of times. Like, screw it. Mike McDaniel said, we got a 30-point lead. We're done. I think they made it a 2-possession game, if I'm not mistaken, like with plenty of time left in the fourth quarter. And McDaniel said, nope, keeping our guys out. Chiefs could theoretically go in that direction if they wanted to, but I don't think they will. And so as we're trying to figure out like where to actually bet this game, like if it's 14 and you think this is the week that the Chiefs go ahead and just wreak havoc, get their confidence and mojo and swag back, whatever you want to sort of put it all together as, fine. I won't fault you for it. I'd probably lean, if I was going to take a side, maybe the Chiefs first half over, where you can find that anywhere between most books have it at 7.5. I think that's a reasonable number. Maybe take the Chiefs in the first half against Houston would probably be the way that I want to go. I'd also consider the Chiefs team total in the first half, which is 15.5. Like, to me, focusing on what the Chiefs are going to do well offensively early on is the play here, because I just don't trust Houston's offense. Even with all the issues that Kansas City has defensively, I just don't trust Houston's offense to do what they need to do to put them in a position without Dameon Pierce, with Brandon Cooks maybe interested in this game. My focus would be on Kansas City, and it would focus on them in the early going of this game as opposed to trying to determine whether or not they're going to be able to cover a 14.5 point spread towards the end of the game. So I think that's where my bet on this game would likely go, Verderame, is probably just take the team total over 15.5 for Kansas City. They likely pour it on early and then maybe go ahead and take their foot off the gas pedal in the second half.
Yeah, I mean that's always the thing with them. I mean, that's why, frankly, as much as this is a Chiefs betting show, I would never bet the spread with this team because you just don't know. They're capable of covering any spread against any team anywhere. I don't care what it is. Like, somebody asked me the other day in my mailbag thing, like, do you think they could beat the Bills in Buffalo? And I was like, yeah, of course they could. I could see them being like a 3-point dog and going up there in the AFC Championship game. I could see them losing. I could also see them absolutely beating the hell out of the Bills. And it's just like, oh, look at that. They won by 20 points. Like, you never know with them what's going to happen from week to week, which is why they're such a carnival act at times. But I think, look, the bottom line, if you're going to bet on the game, I would bet some of those props, and I'd just be aggressive with touchdown props with the Chiefs in the game. You know, pick a guy you like you said, you like Pacheco at a couple. I like Mahomes having a big day. I think Mahomes is going to want to really bounce back, and the Chiefs are going to give him the opportunity to do it. So I think, I'd watch for that. That's how I would approach this. I would take those types of props rather than 14 because the Chiefs could get up 24 points and you're on the right side of it the whole day. And then, the fourth quarter, the Chiefs just start yanking everybody.
Yeah.
That's the risk you run.
For sure.
So, all right. This has been Best Bets with BetSided. And of course, BetSided's Ben Heisler. Go out and check out everything BetSided, whether it is on Twitter at BetSided or, of course, at fanside.com/BetSided. And the YouTube page where you can find just about any kind of gambling content you want. So I will be back at 4 o'clock Central with Patrick Allen. We will break down the game in detail. Beyond the gambling side of it, of course, it'll just be kind of a nuts and bolts preview, and we'll talk about the playoff picture and a whole bunch of other things. I'm sure we'll talk about food at some point as we normally do. All right. For Ben Heisler, I am Matt Verderame. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in about 5 hours.